Welcome to the world in 1250 BC. The green areas are still hunters and gatherers, and in between them there are many farming societies, some of which I have shown in yellow. The pink regions are advanced farming societies, and they include parts of Europe and parts of Asia. Only the red regions have city-state structures. They have kingdoms, empires, also judiciary systems, and so on. They include the Middle East, the Mediterranean, and a small area in the east of China. But within the next 100 years, the majority of these city-states will collapse, and they will revert back to farming societies. How could such a bizarre event in human history take place? And that is the topic of this video. Imagine it's 9 o'clock in the morning. You wake up and you decide to take a walk on a trail. Within 1 hour, you receive a phone call from your boss, and he says, "Ma'am, it was nice having you in this company for the last 10 years, but unfortunately, due to the economic conditions, we're gonna have to let you go." 2 hours after, and you decide to go back home, but then you realize that your house has been destroyed in an earthquake. You have no home to go back into. About 2 p.m., you start to feel sick. You have high fever, you develop rash all over your body, and you cough. You've been hit by an unknown bacteria. It's 7 p.m. and you receive a phone call from your boyfriend or girlfriend, and he says he wants to meet up. And then he says, "Honey, it was nice being with you for the past 5 years, but unfortunately, I'm in love with somebody else." What are the chances? What are the chances that all the terrible things in your life would happen in the next 10 hours? Not much. However, all the bad things that you can think of happened in a 50-year period leading to the collapse of the Bronze Age. And that includes droughts and earthquakes and diseases and all types of things. In this video, I'll be looking at this bizarre event in human history from a certain perspective, and that is the economic downfall of the Hittite Empire. A pollen analysis in the Sea of Galilee in Israel showed that the water levels dropped significantly and there was a shortage of rainfall. Also, other researchers have discovered that there was a reduction in the pine and oak trees of Mediterranean, and instead these trees were being replaced by certain desert plants that only grow in semi-arid deserts. And in famines, usually the lower class are mostly affected. After 1250 BC, we observe mass migrations in the Mediterranean and Anatolian regions. Some of these peasants are just leaving behind their homes and migrating elsewhere. They are engaging in rebellions and revolts against their systems and the way their governments is handling the situation. Before the Bronze Age collapse, there are conflicts and wars between the great empires and kingdoms of the Middle East and Mediterranean. For example, 1274 BC, the kingdom of Egypt and the empire of the Hittites are at war in the Battle of Kadesh. Although the casualties of this war is huge, the outcome is a draw, and the very first international peace treaty is signed between the two. The empires and kingdoms are investing more and more resources on their military, and that increases financial pressure on the lower class. The Bronze Age was the age of piracy, and as we are getting closer to the end of the Bronze Age, the situation of piracy is much worse. The pirates have a full-time job of stealing grains, weapons, and everything that is on these ships. The Hittite Empire decides that enough is enough. They begin investing money and resources and manpower on their military, so their military can protect the East Mediterranean Sea, specifically the island of Cyprus. Cyprus is one of the major sources of copper in the whole Mediterranean. And as we already mentioned, copper is one of the main constituents of bronze. The economy of the Hittite Empire is in a bad situation. A situation I would like to describe as a positive feedback loop. In a positive feedback loop, the effects enhances the cause. This is how it works. At the top, we have hunger, which has resulted from famine and bad decision makings of the government. The hunger pushed people and peasants out of their homelands, causing them to migrate to new locations. And now there is less workforce and labor available to do work, and as a result, less grain production. And that brings us to the top of the loop. There is now more hunger, and the hunger pushes more people to migrate away, and the loop enhances itself, and within a decade there is economic upheaval in the Hittite Empire. And to make matters worse, the decision makers and the upper class of the Hittite Empire have decided to invest more manpower in their military. That means they have to come and take some of these peasants and the servants and the lower class to the military, reducing the number of workforce available in the empire. Gradually, the Hittite Empire realizes that it cannot feed its population, so it signs a contract with the Egyptian kingdom, and according to that contract signed in 1225 BC, Egypt is supposed to supply the Hittite Empire with grains. For a short while, things go according to plan. The Egyptians bring the grain, and the Hittites protect the Mediterranean. In this economic situation, the elite class of the Hittite Empire decide to rebuild the city of Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite Empire. So new temple complexes were being built and new fortifications, and the city almost doubled in size during this time period. But why would you do such a thing? Because you have to take laborers away from your agricultural centers and bring them and force them to work and build new cities. This was not a good time to rebuild the city of Hattusa. From now on, everything moves fast. There is a social upheaval and there is an economic collapse. Other groups, known as the Sea People, are getting on their ships with their families and kids and coming to the Mediterranean, searching for lands, searching for new homes, and they are immediately repelled by the existing empires of the time. After 1200 BC, the Sea People seize the opportunity. This weakened Hittite Empire can no longer protect the Mediterranean seas, and the Sea People begin the raids and invasions of the island of Cyprus, and then they make their way into the city of Ugarit, a major port in Levant, and they burn that city down as well. Sometime between 1200 BC and 1177 BC, another longtime enemy of the Hittite Empire called the Cascade tribe invades the cities from the north, and they begin burning down the Hittite cities. And that's it. The Hittite Empire can no longer handle the pressure. It collapses. The Empire of Hittite is gone. The kingdoms and empires of the Bronze Age were so dependent on each other economically. Their tradings were so linked to each other that if one of them was severely harmed, it would have affected the other ones as well. We saw one example that the Hittite Empire was dependent on the grain import from Egypt. There were many other examples as well. At 1200 BC and after, the major Cyprus cities are burning and they are captured by the sea people. Cyprus is unable to export copper to the Hittite Empire. So at this point, bronze production and bronze trading routes are severely affected in the Mediterranean region. And we are reaching a point of no return in this area, because these kingdoms and empires are so dependent on each other economically that when two of them has already collapsed, the rest of them will just collapse in a domino effect. Considering that these kingdoms and empires are also suffering from the effects of the great famine, drought, and also their own internal conflicts and social upheavals and the uprisings. By the year 1150 BC, the great supernova has happened. The Bronze Age has collapsed.